Good morning, everybody. We're here today in a unique location that we haven't had a disaster council meeting from before. We are at our Emergency Operations Center for the Ojai Disaster Council meeting of Wednesday, April 27th, 2022 at 10 a.m. And so I think because we're in the EOC, we're going to try to do it a little more casually this week. So I won't necessarily stick to the script, but we'll start by calling the meeting to order. I think the two items is the overview of the Emergency Operations Center and then a quick review of our draft evacuation guide. So we'll proceed with the agenda. The one item we do have before that is the approval of minutes for January 26, 2022. And so I think I'll just ask, is there any objection to approving the minutes of January 26th that are in the packet? Hearing none, we'll consider those approved and we'll post them on the website. So we do have because the Brown Act meeting, we do have the opportunity for public comment. There's no members of the public in the room, even though it's open to the public today. But is there anybody on the Zoom meeting that has a public comment?
There's Chris Stanch, but he doesn't have his hand raised.
Okay. Yeah, if you have a public comment, you can raise your hand and we'll allow it. But otherwise, we will take questions and everything during the discussion. So seeing no public comment, we'll move to the presentation, which are the first item, which is the Emergency Operations Center tour and overview. So really, let's start. I realized I was planning to start with introductions and skip right over them. So let's start with introductions, and I'll start with our newest member, Chief Williams from the fire department. Chief, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Joe Williams. I'm a division chief of the County of Ventura, and I have West County operations, which includes the city of Ojai, Santa Paula, and Point Hueneme.
I'm James Vega. I'm the city manager of Ojai, and I'm one of the two city representatives on the disaster council, or one of the three, with Mayor Sticks, and then we also currently have Councilmember Wire. So, and I've been on the disaster council for 5 years at this point.
Captain Jose Rivera with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, and I am the chief of police here in the city.
Mayor Betsy, and I'm the mayor, and I'm grateful to all of you for your collaboration and to James for bringing us together and just all that teamwork. So appreciate all of you, and you guys on together too. Hi. Thank you.
Andrew and Robin, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Andrew Mackey, City Manager's Office, Disaster Council Liaison.
And Robin Godfrey, I'm the Public Information Coordinator and working with James on some disaster-related projects.
And just stepping in, Alma, our Public Works Director.
Hi.
And the man who needs no introduction, Bob Daddy, it's just joined us. So, good morning. So we are on Zoom recording, so and we're recording it, so people may be watching this at a later point as well. So we'll try to keep that in mind when we're talking and just kind of give general overviews and things. But the point of today's, well, the first item on today's meeting was the Emergency Operations Center overview. And the main thing with that is we've all talked about the Emergency Operations Center and how it's worked and everything else, but we realized we've never gotten people in the room and shown people how it actually operates. So we had a staff training this morning at 8:30 and set up the room. And so we are in the midst of a set up Emergency Operations Center. And we wanted to just give a very basic overview. And then as part of that, we wanted to talk a little bit about in an emergency, how things are coordinated between the fire department, the sheriff's department, the county EOC, the city, the county public works, all those agencies that interact, Red Cross, all of those things. And so just to kind of get everybody oriented, our emergency operations center is in the police station here in Ojai. In an emergency, we come in and the room is pretty much set up like this all the time, but we come in and we set up the emergency laptops and emergency phones. And these are the, what do we call them, James? Analog phones?
Yes.
So they're analog phones, so that if the cell towers get knocked out, we still have a way to communicate to the rest of the world. And so during the Thomas fire, that did happen a couple days where cell phone reception was either non-existent or spotty. So we were able to use these phones to still connect to the county EOC. And we have our laptops, which we also use to coordinate with the county and perform some of our other functions like our public information processes and things like that. And so for the city of Ojai, this is kind of the nerve center when an emergency occurs. What we try to do typically is get about half our staff, our 28 full-time employees, we get about half of them in here and half of them continue to do their work over at City Hall or at the Public Works Yard because normal business still happens, but so we get about 14 people in this room. During something like the Thomas fire, we had to split up into day and night shifts. So we had a few people, the way it ended up, we had a few people at night and then we had a team of like 5 or 6 during the day. And so we are trying to do, for big events like that, 24-hour services. And what the city does is a lot of coordination. We get calls from the county EOC, calls from the fire department, calls from the police department, calls from residents, and we have all of our phones and everything, and we're taking those calls and trying to kind of connect people and get information to the right places. We have in our emergency binders that we have at these stations, we have things like lists of all the phone numbers for the different agencies and things. And we'll take these numbers and we'll put them up on the wall. And when we get a call from a resident or from the fire department or the police department, and we know we need to get somebody else on, like coordinate with someone, we'll either grab this or we have it up on the wall and we'll call and get things coordinated. And just as like an example of that, there's a lot of examples from the Thomas fire, but one that I've talked about is at one point with Nordoff High School, being the evacuation site, at one point we were making plans for if that area needed to be evacuated. And so that was a situation where the county EOC called us and asked what resources we had. So we got our trolley drivers and our recreation instructors. We lined up recreation vans and trolleys here at City Hall and gassed them up and everything. And then the county was doing the same thing, coordinating, getting some of their vehicles and things like that. And then thankfully, in that situation, the way it worked out, we never had to do that, but we were preparing for it. And that's like something that we may have to do in an emergency. And so it's just a lot of the city's involvement is a lot of the coordination of those things. But I think one point that I want to make, and one reason I want to ask Chief Rivera and Chief Williams to speak a little bit about how their agencies work is, I think sometimes that people get the impression that like the city, is determining where to send firefighters or where to send our police officers, and that's really not our purview in those situations. And so, so the city coordinates with all these agencies. We also sometimes send somebody to the county EOC to work there to coordinate closely with them. And then I wanted to ask Chief Rivera and Chief Williams to give a little overview of what they do in an emergency and how they get information and how they respond. So Chief Rivera, do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So, in a situation like this, where we do activate EOC, it's not just, an operation from the police department, fire department. It's actually working as a team. So everybody has a vital part in this operation. So if we have a situation where we may have to evacuate a certain area, we'll work with our partners here in the room to coordinate that so we can effectively evacuate an area. Same with road closures. I mean, we can't just go out there and just start closing roads down. We have to work with Public Works and coordinate that with them to assist us in coordinating off at a particular street or an area. So we have to, we can't rely a lot of times on the information we receive from the public. We have to send people out to evaluate the situation, because we get a lot of misinformation. So it's good to have observers out there. And that's where the city workers, the PD can go out and give us back real-time information to evaluate and strategize how we're going to handle a particular situation. If need be, we can close the roads or evacuate a certain area. If we need resources to do those evacuations, that's when we kind of reach out to other folks here in the room and say, hey, I've got an area that needs to be evacuated. What resources do we have available that we can accomplish this in a safe manner? So a lot of it is communication. We can't just, I can't just send officers out to do, directly to do certain things without letting everybody know what's going on and how to effectively do accomplish those goals. So it's really important. Communication is really important, especially in EOC operations.
Thank you. Chief, do you want to, Chief Williams, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I say just do that. But, no, it's absolutely, it's a team effort. It's all about communication, and one of the main things we see when we have a stressful environment or incident is communication is one of the first things that falls. And we lose cell service. That's why you have your analog phones here. If it's coming to something like a wildfire, my position will most likely be involved in managing the wildfire. And so I will either delegate somebody or I'll maintain communication with you. And that way we can maintain the communications and our teamwork.
Yeah. Thank you. And then each agency has their own processes. And so just as an example, I wanted to talk a little bit about like the city, because depending on the emergency, there could be a bunch of different needs, but there's certain things we do for all emergencies, and then there's some emergency specific things. But one of the things for the city is we immediately start to track all hours spent on an emergency, and the finance department becomes heavily involved tracking the staff time used and the expenses. And public works is involved coordinating, getting the crew out, getting those things out, but also sometimes ordering items that are needed to respond and getting equipment and gear and things. And so the finance department helps track those things and make sure that we're eligible. If the emergency gets FEMA reimbursement, that we're eligible to be reimbursed for that. And then depending on the emergency, there's different ways we're involved. The building department can be involved if it's something like an earthquake and people aren't sure if their structures are, impacted. One of the nice things right now is our building official and our building inspector are through a company called Charles Abbott and Associates. And we've talked to them about if there was something like that, they could get kind of all their inspectors out to the area that needs it very quickly. And we'd have 5 or 6 inspectors instead of just having the one guy, which in other cities, people saw this was with some of the different events was there was a waiting list to get, inspected or to get certain city services. So with our contractors, we're able to kind of staff up if there's an emergency. I think Chief Rivera mentioned our public works department gets heavily involved in most emergencies you can think of. During the Thomas fire, they're involved clearing road debris. They were involved helping coordinate road closures, and I think we got some barricades and things out. The wind was pretty severe, so we had branches and things falling, and they were clearing those out so people could evacuate. If there was a landslide, public works would be heavily involved trying to clear roads or things like that. So some of this is like dependent on the type of emergency, but that's where the city gets involved, and then we're coordinating with the partners at the same time. And then one of the things we put an emphasis on since the Thomas Fire was trying to build up our public information systems and processes, and Robin is here to really put the focus on that and getting the information out, monitoring social media, fact checking rumors, all that kind of stuff. So, so there's a lot of aspects to it, but it's all happening from here. So that's why we wanted to show this room, and this is where we would have kind of the nerve center during an emergency. So, with that, I think that's kind of a general overview. So if anybody has questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Sure.
Just on this segment, we got a lot more to go.
Sure.
Probably for the public, simple speak would be the best.
Right.
So when you say analog phone, you just lost 90% of people. And so, we really have to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And so if you're suggesting that an analog phone is not a plug-in phone, so when we lose our electricity,
It is a plug-in phone.
it still works. And maybe what we need to do is delineate between the phone I have, which is the state mandated earthquake phone that operates without electricity. So a number of us kept those, in the garage for emergencies, and we need to let people know that no, your analog will not work when there's no electricity, right? And so that's something, they can buy these old earthquake phones for like $10. You just put them in the garage and have them forever. You didn't mention interaction with utility agencies when we have the gas company having a flat fire, when we have utility poles down, when we have live wires in the street, when we have those types of things that we have at Paradise. I mean, we had some cowboys that just went in there with the bulldozers on their own and knocked everything out of the way, ripped down poles, took out wires, but that was just individual people. So I would hope that, you guys have got a direct hotline to somebody that's gonna come and disable live wires in a down pole,
Yeah.
stopping an entire evacuation route.
Right.
And then the last thing was Chief Rivera, thank you very much for bringing this up. It's eyes on. What the insurance companies now are doing is they're going with drones. Because what they're finding out is that they can't get past traffic. Things are gridlock. They can't get a better view, and we can get a better view of the horizon. And I just don't know if we're thinking of coordinating with the county and the individuals in the city for someone to get a few drones. So, if we have something that's sudden, that we can at least get immediate eyes on, so we can evaluate the resources necessary.
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know if you're aware, but our officers, we usually have one officer that is trained to operate a drone, and we do have drones in their patrol vehicles. We utilize them for different situations, search and rescue, things like that. But we do have them available on patrol.
And then I guess the last thing on this one segment is, I know we've got it further in the packet. The first resource we lost, of course, was our radio station. And is everybody going to be linked in that we need radio stations? So if we have an officer that has got a drone and he's got eyes on something that's really ugly, are they going to be able to real time to the radio station so we can broadcast that immediately so people can access that?
Yeah, and that's something that we've been working on. As I think we've talked about at Disaster Council, we've put some resources in the radio station. We got the battery backup set up so that there's that backup capability. We've got the new computer that will help us upload to it quicker and easier. And then the last key part was getting Robin on board as our PIO, and then we are working on a training with Robin, James, and I to actually start testing out how to use the radio station James knows how to use it, but no one else does. So we always joke with James.
No vacation. for
If he's on,
James.
yeah, if he's on a cruise during an emergency or something.
My concern about the radio station is if we do any of the things that we self-employed in Tom's life, we lost internet, we lost cable, we lost power, we lost all telephone, we lost our radio station, we lost all of our cell, well, 16 of the 19 cell sites. We lost 99% of our ability to communicate.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a car radio, just about, at least one on the block, right? And that's a real-time way to communicate if we'll advertise it. And just make sure that everybody's got a way to feed information.
Yeah.
And I hope you integrate that very strongly.
Yeah. We also just recently, it was about 6 months ago, we ordered some of those emergency road signs that you can throw out. I think we ordered 4 of them that we'd be able to just throw out across town that says emergency tuned to AM 1610. So we're working on that. We're kind of step by step, but yeah, the point is appreciated that yes, during recent emergencies, multiple communication systems fail. So I think the lesson is for all of us is know what communication options there are and redundancies, have backups and get the message out through multiple channels. So that's what we're working on.
And then lastly, can we go to the very simplest of all options? Can we get a banner at the post office that says emergency instructions, the radio station, the web, and maybe a couple of pertinent, turn on the VC emergency. I mean, they got a great website down there, give a couple of references. So when we don't have electricity again, people will be able to visually see and pass on information.
That's good. I know in the evacuation plan, we start laying out all the different communication tools. So that's something we can include. So.
Are you suggesting a banner, the ones that go across?
Yeah, right, because
With emergency information.
there you go,
That's
because
something easy we can incorporate.
Yeah,
And
$1,000.
fly it out, not in a dead emergency situation, but just to have the information there for people.
James was, I think, eager to talk about the analog phones.
I was gonna, when we refer to analog phones, it's what's referred to in the industry as POTS, which literally stands for plain old telephone. It does not require AC power. It just plugs in. As long as there's a phone line, it will work.
Yeah, we have backup power here. That's something we get asked a lot about. I think there's a rumor that we don't have backup power and that if something happened, that the city hall and the police station would be shut down. They wouldn't be. And during the Thomas fire, we used the backup power and continued operations. So we have backup power. And so I didn't realize that those didn't even use power. I just assumed they're using the backup power.
Yeah, no, they're just old phones. Old phones work great.
Are there any comments on the Zoom? If you have a comment on Zoom or a question on Zoom, you can raise your hand and we'll pull you in.
None.
Nothing? Okay, cool. So anyway, item 1, like I said, was just kind of an overview, getting people used to it. We had our staff training here this morning. We were doing trainings every 6 months and we thought maybe we had missed one and we realized we hadn't done one for 2 years, basically a month before COVID. And COVID hit. We did actually activate for the first month of COVID an EOC. So I guess we didn't do a training, but we actually activated. But somehow we look and it's 2 years later. And so we did our staff training today and got a lot of people in here for the first time. So, so kind of item 1 was just getting everybody familiar with it, knowing how it works during an emergency. The last point I'll make is, I think Chief Rivera mentioned this, but the other agencies typically have their own EOCs too. And so where we connect is the county EOC is kind of we're almost like the nerve center for Ojai, I like to think of, but they're the nerve center for the county. And so their EOC is located at the government center and it's a lot bigger and a lot fancier, but it's pretty much the same functionality that we have here. And so that is one of the groups that we end up kind of making direct contact with immediately, and they're hearing from everybody and then, kind of we're trying to share that information. So that'll be another big piece at some point, and we'll have, we'll try to get some of the EOC members out here for one of the future disaster council meetings. So that being said, that's our first item, just the Emergency Operations Center overview.
James, have this meeting scheduled for council?
We're working on it. So we're gonna try to get them out here. So the next item on the agenda is actually an item we talked about recently. This is a first draft. So we watermarked it draft. So we want to kind of let people know our plan was not like just to write it and say, here you go. We wanted to create a draft that we can all talk about, and then also go out to some stakeholders to talk about. And so this first step is we put together a draft document with the help of recently retired Chief McNeil, who I would say between him and Robin, they did all the heavy lifting. So thank you to Chief McNeil and to Robin. But this is our first draft. And one of the things that we proposed and that we prepared in the first draft is trying to keep it very user friendly and very much a document that a community member or a visitor or whoever needs it would be able to just either grab because we'll have printed copies around, so either they'll be able to grab one or pull it off the website. And kind of what I pictured is in an event like the Thomas Fire, where we knew the day before that there was a fire and we weren't sure if it was coming this way or not, that somebody that wants to take precautions would be able to pull this up and kind of go, okay, let me take a couple minutes and read this and make sure I know where to go and what to do and what to look for. So that's the intent, I think, of this first draft. We wanted to provide it to the disaster council, get some feedback, get some comments. But ultimately, what we want to do is, if everybody's on board, we want to start scheduling the stakeholder meetings with some of the key organizations to get their feedback on it. And then that version, once we have that stakeholder feedback, would then come back for disaster council review and then city council review. So just briefly, the second page is the table of contents for the guide. Like I said, we try to keep it very simple. So we have, I'm going to just highlight the key parts that we listed. We have an introduction just explaining the guide and what the intent is. We talk about how events are coordinated. And then some of the key things are the next couple sections. One is we tell the community how to stay informed and where to go for information and all the different options to go for information during an emergency for official sources of information and not the rumors on Facebook that pop up. Then we talk about the how traffic control is coordinated and then our potential evacuation routes. We talk about safe refuge areas and shelters, which that's probably one of the areas that I would actually want to focus on a little bit today and get some feedback on. And then we are planning to, we're working with the fire department right now to get some updated maps that will show all of these things. So we have that earmarked, but we don't have those maps in this draft yet. And then last, we talk about being prepared for an emergency and having an emergency kit ready to go. And so I won't read through it line by line. I think I did that recently at a meeting and I got like 8 pages of minutes afterwards. So I won't go through it line by line, but the general thing we wanted to see is we wanted to get feedback from everybody if we're on the right path and we are ready to move forward to the stakeholders. So, if anybody has any questions or comments? Yeah.
Having been the manager of a state farm when we had Malibu go down and the Northridge earthquake, a little bit of expertise in some of this stuff. One of the things I would like to see is maybe using something the fire department uses. They've got that wonderful sign that you enter Casita Springs that is a hazard thermometer. And I think one of the things we need to do initially in this with the first amount of communication is let people know what the severity and the risks are. If it's the flood that we got in 2006, it was gradual and we developed over a half a dozen days. So it's no knee jerk. If it's an earthquake, it's over in 120 or 240 seconds, and there's not much of a chance for a knee jerk. When we have a fire down at Stucco Park, we're gonna have a little bit of time. We don't want people just panicking and just doing what they did before, which is run into the gas station, gridlocking the entire area, and then trying to get out. I mean, the lack of communication caused an awful lot of gridlock issues that were unnecessary for us. And so I think if we can kind of say that, hey, we have something right now, and this is a level 3, or a severity 2, or something where this is not a, get out of here right now kind of issue. Now, it wasn't Casita Springs because it's burning on both sides of the road. So, that was a snap. You've got to do something immediately. But I kind of think you need to let people know how bad it is up front, so they can get adjusted and stay tuned. And we're gonna update this every. And let me give you a bad example of what happens with communication or lack of. I was, because I'm insurance, I'm running over the Bates Road, if you know where that is. That's on the other side of our 150 that goes over the car. We had a real bad incident where we had an old car break down during the Thomas. It got on the road and it gridlocked everybody that couldn't get up the road. So I wanted to loop around. I was talking to Bill Wyrick, and it's about 6:30 in the morning. And I said, I'm taking a road trip and you go see this. And he says, you'll never get through. And I said, why? He said, I'm looking at the liner on channel 3. And it says the road is closed at Stanley. And I said, maybe we need to get these radio stations to change what they do and put the original message time. Because I just drove through Stanley at 75 miles an hour on the road, and there's not so much as a traffic cone. So when we put out a message and it's 18 hours old, we're freaking people out, and it's absolutely causing the wrong message unless we date and timestamp that message. So, I mean, just, these are real, these are real time, real issues that just take a tiny bit of extra coordination and massaging.
Yeah, the time stamping, we learned that one during the Thomas, or actually right after the Thomas fire. If anybody remembers, right after the Thomas fire, anytime there was any smoke, everybody would freak out and thought it was the second Thomas fire. And so about 2 weeks later in, I think it was even a little past Miners Oak, so maybe it was Oak View, but there was some smoke and everything. So somebody did a search for, fire in Ojai, and all the messages that we had posted 2 weeks before about Thomas fire came up, and they thought that those were for this event, that they needed to evacuate and they needed to do this. So we did learn that kind of the hard way at that point, that we needed to, put up front, and we try to do this now, Monday,
Time
whatever the day is.
update,
Yeah.
time update, because
Yeah.
again, if that thing were, 12 hours old.
Yeah.
And I listened to it, I turned around and I
Yeah.
didn't, and I went up, because I needed to survey that boy for Korea Beach, everything built on that, burn on the hill all the way around. 'Cause I have a responsibility to call our company and to say, hey, here's how bad it is. We probably got 1,000 claims, and we need to roll X amount of hundreds of adjusters and things. I mean, so that really helps, and I'm glad they didn't listen to what was broadcast.
Yeah, that's a key thing. The one thing I'll say as far as a challenge, and I think both Chief Rowe and Chief Williams know this too, is that I'm hearing kind of across agencies, across cities, across counties, across police agencies, fire agencies, the hardest thing right now is keeping up with how fast news travels and rumors travel and everything else. And so we got this a lot during Thomas Fire where, it was probably the same exact thing where somebody would call and say, you guys said that road's closed, but it's not. And I go, well, they said, why don't you announce that it's not closed? Well, I have to call police and fire and the county EOC and make sure before I announce it, right? Because if I announce it's open and it's not, that's a problem. So then 45 minutes later, and we're all, okay, let's, we call one person, okay, I think that's right, but let's call this person, okay. And by the time you confirm it, it's already old news, and it's already on Facebook, it's already on Twitter. And so the only reason I'm mentioning that is, I think, kind of to set the expectation. I'm pretty sure if there's another major emergency, there will be a time where somebody says, I didn't get the information I wanted when I wanted it. It's just the way it is. But we're working on the tools to try to make sure we're getting the information out as quick as we can. And some of the things like, even you mentioned the utilities earlier in Southern California, Edison with their cameras and
Emergency
things like that.
response.
We're trying to pull all that information together and keep everybody aware of where to look. But it's a challenge. Like that one's it's just gonna be, we're just gonna have to work hard. That's the best.
Is there public access to those cameras?
So Southern California Edison has given us partner access to them. They had mentioned, if you remember, I think at a disaster council meeting, that they could open to the public. So we asked them to let us know when we can do that. We haven't gotten that yet. So that's something I'll follow up
I
on.
mean, had we had that ability to look at some of those cameras that are here now, we would have been able to watch that thing move up from Steckle Park from Santa Paula and take out Camp Barrett and decimate that. And then Koenigsegg Road and just, evaporate that. And people could see that this thing was coming in waves. And so, when I got up the second day and I went up to Thatcher, that big orange road, there was about 300 cars parked in that vacant lot, watching fire sweep over. That's crazy, but, so whatever we can do on the time.
Yeah.
And even if it's timestamp 6 hours home, that's okay. It gives people an idea that, hey, this is the latest and we should.
I can't rely on this information.
Yep. The wind's blowing real hard now. Sure, the fire lines moved, right?
I have a question on the emergency signboards that we purchased.
Sure.
Can those be changed remotely or does somebody need to go up to it?
They could be changed remotely.
The new one we're purchasing can be changed remotely. So that was the one, I guess I should have announced that. That was the one that the council approved purchasing on, 2 weeks ago, whatever date that was. The council approved purchasing a new portable message board that can be changed remotely. And we have, I think the sheriff's department has a message board, we have a message board, and this will be another one. So it's just trying to be ready to pull those out, quickly.
Can the sheriff's be changed remotely?
No, we have to go and manually change the message.
Sorry about all those change requests.
Okay.
I just want to say this is incredible, beautiful,
Thank you.
exciting, really wonderful. So thank you, staff, for putting this together. And so then how do we make everybody do it?
Yeah, well, that's, I think the key thing is trying to get everybody to buy in. And that's why we're talking about stakeholder meetings, kind of going to the different groups that all have a role in this and saying, help us get the word out. And we want to make sure that we're telling people what they're comfortable with too, so I think the next step for us towards that is having those the stakeholder conversations with groups like Red Cross and County EOC, and make sure that they're on board and that we're all on the same page. So
And also making sure anytime possible that people see, visualizing this, seeing each piece. For example, at the rec center, the open house,
yeah.
it's possible to do some kind of, I don't want to do any of the work. It's display to say, and, make it fun and interactive and.
Yeah.
Just flyers.
Yeah.
That's what they look like.
What's funny is last year we tried for the first time we bought our flashlights, and those were trying to get the message out on disaster preparedness. And when we ordered them, we're like, who wants a little flashlight with a city of Ojai logo on them? And I think they became like collector's items. People were,
We used to ran out of Ojai Day.
yeah, on Ojai Day, we had 1,000 of them, and they were gone by about, what, 1 PM or so. So
Whistles are good.
we'll try to get some of those things, yeah.
Mayor, that was, how do we get the information out?
Well, how do we get everyone to do it?
Well,
To
we
put-
have Ojai Day,
Yes.
and I know the Colored in the Waterman's there.
Mhm.
And it would be nice if we would incorporate a set time, you know, consistency matters, and if we would just have a set time because of the time of the year, which would be Ojai Day and City Fire Corporation Week, and we could get some assistance from our partners, maybe utilities, partners, CERT, whoever in the world we can get in this. We've got a large animal problem. People are very devoted to the horses, and it causes a lot of angst and gridlock and real problems. You know, we could really make Ojai Day and expand it into a community issue of information and get all of the different participating entities to go ahead and be there and to talk about their part. And that way we've got many voices putting out different parts of this where some of it might resonate with somebody, and we can do, as you say, get them to do this,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe the fire department and the sheriff can't, maybe the Humane Society can,
Mhm.
maybe this other entity, they're tied in with that and they'll glom onto that. Or we get our ham radio emergency operators there, they show up and all this stuff. It really has to be a community issue.
I agree totally. It's a great idea. What about a float on the 4th of July parade about preparedness?
Fire season is coming again, right?
You want to do it?
It's always fire season.
It is now.
I have a question. Is this gonna be available on, I know it's a draft right now, but when final, is this gonna be available online?
Yeah, the thought is that we will make it into an ebook, which will be kind of an evergreen publication. So you're talking about like your meter. We could change the cover on it in a heartbeat. The link would stay the same, and the link be part of the My Ojai app. It could be on our website. It could go out through social. So as we have changes, we can update it in a heartbeat, and it will remain, you know, live for everyone. I wanted to echo on the getting the word out too. It is all about a trusted messenger. So having this partnership here and having fire go out to the people that are really, you know, committed to fire and et cetera, Humane Society getting to the horse people. I mean, that's, I think, how we're going to drive people to action. And we'll build a whole big campaign around it. So yeah, everyone will know.
And is your name Robin?
Yes.
We haven't met.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you.
A question for us older people here. Is it possible that we can have a demonstration area where we can get somebody to participate and help all the seniors have the My Ojai app actually put on their phone at Ojai Day, where they have it? Because what happens now is we're less than 30% landlines. Reverse 911 is not going to work. It's going to work for very small if we have phones.
You know, we
So-
did that on Ojai Day.
Well, and Centennial, the Ojai Centennial
Oh, that's
is
right.
doing that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know their Apple password.
That
So
was
you
a-
cannot download
So-
an app without their Apple
Yeah,
password.
we took an old phone and we went and we were showing them how to do it. And it was funny because everybody would just go, okay, just do it on my phone. You know, like we were trying to show people how to do it. So then we'd go in, we'd do it, and then it would say, what's your password? And we go, okay, give me your password.
And they
Well,
didn't
I don't
log it
have
in
a
a phone like
Yeah.
that.
They didn't have their password,
Yeah.
and even a council member like, I don't know my password.
But a lot of people asked for it.
Yeah, I mean, I
And we
did.
got some
definitely.
of them. The ones who knew their passwords, we got it on their phone.
Right, exactly. So it's
So we can
sad.
do that again.
But yes, it's, I'm gonna say the newer, a lot of them have older phones, so they don't have the face
They don't work,
recognition.
I know.
So
Like that.
that's a challenge.
For fire.
Mhm.
So, well, I spent some time in Texas and there was a FEMA program called Pause, and I'm not sure how that was spelled. Does that ring a bell with anyone? And it was basically the modern iteration of reverse 911. where they could reach everybody on mobile phones or landlines. And FEMA was rolling it out to counties, and I'm not sure if it's something that exists here or not. This is another state.
I've not heard of federal, but I know we have VC Alert, which
Yeah.
is the county service.
Right, this was kind of a
County
notch
areas.
above the supplemental folks you could reach directly.
I have not heard a federal program.
We do use reverse 911 in our dispatch center. We utilize it for when we have a major incident, we tell people that they need to shelter in place. Because there's an incident going on in a particular neighborhood, so they can target a particular neighborhood
Okay,
and send that information out.
is that the federal program or is that the local reverse?
I think it's a local reverse 911.
But I always give the reminder when we have the opportunity, and since people may be watching this, that VC Alert, make sure you go in every once in a while and check your profile. Because I learned the hard way. I think I moved here 6 months before the Thomas fire, and I was on VC Alert at my old house in Fort Wayne. And I woke up the day that the fire was coming. I'm like, I'm not hearing anything. You know, I think people are overreacting. I found out that there had been alerts sent out that I did not get. So we always say take the chance now before there's an emergency to update your address if you've moved recently.
And it's so easy to turn them off. I got my Amber Alerts at like 2 in the morning. I'll pick up my phone and think, turn off alerts. And then forget to turn them back on again.
Has there been a physical brochure ever, what to know to do, and all right, especially for the older folks? Would that be something?
We haven't done it before, but that's part of our plan for this. One of the goals I want to get to is, because we've talked about, like, it's going to be hard to reach on a Saturday, 10,000 visitors in town at any point. So we were talking about printing some of these in various forms and having them at, the hotels, like giving them to the people at the front counter at some of the hotels, and putting in places like the library and, and those types of things. So that's part of the rollout plan for this, is to figure out where we can put some hard copies of them.
That'd be great. And even mailing them out, that's expensive. It's just getting to everybody.
Yeah.
The other thing is maybe we get the school districts on board, they can distribute them through their children to take home.
Yeah.
There's always
That's a
handouts
great idea.
that their schools send out, a weekly Friday. Now, I don't know, but.
And for people that like it, we'll do a QR code where they can scan the code and it'll immediately take them to this as well.
And refrigerator menus.
I'm not sure. I got
I just have a couple of questions for the fire chief because he's here.
he made the mistake of showing
I got a
John
letter-
McNeil.
I got a letter at home saying that I need to clear brush and weed and create this fire defensible perimeter around my home, like June 1st, I believe.
Mhm.
What types of requirements are there for the city so that I can start planning for the right of way and clearing anything I want to do on my home?
So all the parcels are already pre-identified. If they're it's called a fire hazard reduction program. Okay, and they're already been pre-identified and they've been in the program for years. And then the notices go out, and then most homeowners unless they're new to the area, they'll get it in the mail and they just follow the steps. It's got bullet points on there, how to clear the lot and what we're looking for.
And so I'm more worried about what I need to do on my end in the parks and center medians and things like that.
We,
Does that apply?
within the city, we inspect. So I've had the building department inspect, the building officials inspect. And I have a list of, 64 addresses that are currently in violation within the city. So we've sent our notices out. And so I will double check, but I'm 99% sure we don't have any parcels on that list. We don't have any issues. But we did, it's kind of like another partnership. Is the fire department sends notices out, and we do inspections and send notices out in the city too. We've been doing, we did the 2 rounds this year of like early warnings because of the rain and everything, and weeds popping up early this year. So we did 2 rounds of early warnings, and we just sent our formal notices out 2 weeks ago, I think it was. April 1st, so 3 or 4 weeks.
So is the deadline on that June 1st for the home?
Yeah, that's when crews start going out and doing inspections.
Okay, and then this is not really a question, it's more of a comment. I see an opportunity to integrate Bob Daddy's suggestion of the banner and having a fire safety week
before that June 1st deadline that would maybe draw attention and tell people where this is published, or you can look it up a website, hashtag stay safe Ojai, that kind of thing. I think,
I don't think it will be ready, but the Stay Safe Ojai is just kind of idea we're floating around to as an umbrella for all of our safety messaging to tie it together. So we can certainly get something out. And I've had on my list to do some fire clearing, like social posts. So we got together on that.
Anything community education related with us, you can just notify me and I can contact our agency. We go 4 days or 4 times a year, put up a booth and have volunteers staffing it, and fire prevention. So it doesn't have to be fire safety week or one particular time.
Yeah.
If it's Arbor Day and you would like community ed to be there for the fire department, we'd love to be here.
I'm so glad you said that because we actually have an event on Friday.
Gotta give you a little bit of notice.
Fourth of July, what better time?
4th of July.
But it doesn't have to be a specific day related to it. It's
Okay.
Here's what we got going on in town. We've got these things everywhere.
I think to that point, we are starting to work, Robin and I are starting to work on Ojai Day this year. So I think for sure it'd be great to have all the public safety folks there. And I think last year we had a little kind of corridor where we had CERT, the city doing the My Ojai stuff and the police chief. And so we'll try to get everybody there this year for that too.
So third Saturday in October.
Third Saturday in October.
Lots of events before.
Yeah, a lot of events.
You know, the Humane Society's 90th birthday party. Is that right?
Anniversary.
Anniversary. I mean, that would be,
That's June 11th.
okay, might be nice to have some information about what they're doing with animals.
Yeah, they're one of the key stakeholders that I really want to reach out to, because I think one section I really want to beef up on this is preparation for pets and then large animals in particular. So I think multiple of us in the room during the Thomas fire had to deal with either getting pigs out of town or other people horses out of town. Yeah, so that was not fun. So I think trying to get people more prepared for that. So.
Don't forget the litter box.
Note
to self.
Been there.
All right, I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions. I'll ask, I think we're wrapping up, so if anybody has anything to add on Zoom, please raise your hand. Mention one more time, just because I announced it. No?
No.
All right, so I think with that, so I want to ask for a vote. I think there's a consensus. We'll move this forward to the point where we're going to send it to stakeholders, ask them to start giving feedback, and then probably do some sort of stakeholder meeting. So it'll come back after that. So anybody have any last words before we
Bravo.
adjourn?
Thank you so much, everybody.
My last word, let's start this process immediately, get as many stakeholder meetings as you can. And what will happen is we're gonna have a couple of people sitting out there in the audience, and they're gonna bring up a question. That's very relevant and very important that we didn't think about.
Nobody's thought of, yep.
So that's so we can get the rest of the brain trust involved.
Yeah.
The faster we can streamline this thing and get it down to where we can make it really useful.
You know, we had that, one of those things happen already when we were talking, and we were talking about keeping your car gassed up because of the gas stations, and we stopped and went, how does this work for electric vehicles?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
The people in Minnesota that got stuck for a week,
That's
well,
true.
when the flush went out, you don't come and give them a charge on the battery and they drive away. And you don't have any vehicles that can charge them and have them drive away.
Yeah.
So you have whole highways of stalled electric vehicles.
Yeah.
That's in the Northeast. We're not gonna have that.
But even from 5 years ago, from the Thomas fire to now, there are new problems that we haven't thought about. So I agree. We're gonna try to get out to the
Keep them
state.
half charged and instead of half.
That's our message.
Half filled. Half filled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Charge every night. So we put the guy.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out.